stand up.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce a couple of guests that are here today. Colleague, can you please put your hand up, stand up, so everyone knows where you are, and you can recognize you. Ms. Shannon Lawson, guest of the President Connie Hensler, and Ms. Sharon Alford, another guest of Ms. Connie Hensler. Thank you.
Well, we will come back and join us again. Okay, a couple of announcements with birthdays and anniversaries. Happy birthday today to our own Chuck Damon. Happy birthday. Greg Gibbs has a birthday on August 17th. Anniversaries, Charles Ferguson, 14 years on August 18th. There is one wedding anniversary, Darren and Lisa. Their anniversary is on the 18th, 34 years. So, congratulations. Just a couple of follow now, we'll have our board meeting, our monthly board meeting will be next week, right after this meeting. So, if you need a makeup or if you're on a committee or board, please plan to join us at 1 o'clock. And then Scott cannot be here today, but we are how many days away from the race? Not many. 30 days. But he's been hard for us. He wants to return from his vacation. I am happy to report that we have more than doubled our number of racers or people who have signed up since last year. So we're on the right path, but please continue to promote the race with all of your contacts. Share the link. We'll keep a watch on that, and we'll keep counting down the days and counting up the numbers. So it's going to be a great event. And those are all the announcements we have, unless there's any others that I'm not sure or didn't know about. Okay. We do have $50. So anyone have anything needs to report or share?
I was asked to say, number one, hello to Barbara. And use the microphone because she does try to do it, to see it. And then if someone is not using the microphone, she can't hear anything.
Thank you.
Well, it is fall and let's forget it's kicking off our season. I'm sorry. Sorry, Barbara. So next week, we started our class this week, and we've had 400 kids and their parents going through our building. It's been fun and chaotic. But next week, we had School of Rock, the Lafayette Theater Company production of School of Rock. It is almost sold out for considered Wednesday next week, but there are tickets left for Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Be very sure we got about 100 people. We had some wonderful sponsors here in the community, which we appreciate. And we have a lot of people from Grange College that are involved. Will Gray is playing the Dewey character. If you've seen the movie Jack Black, he was the main character, so he did a great job at that. But we had a lot of people from it. And then on Sunday following, we have Stories with Friends at the Truth Vanderbilt Club. And this is a free event. You want to come and tell a story, listen to a story. 2 to 4 o'clock on that Sunday, the 25th. Thanks.
Well, if there's no other happy opportunities to share, I'd like to have Michelle Benton come here and do something. Michelle?
Today's speaker, I have known, I guess, since she started doing this work in 2012. And you know, there's just those people that you work alongside that you know you can call and they would drop anything just to help you and be there. Chris is one of those people for me. So Krista Gotham, Regional Prevention Coordinator for the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy, August 2012. She's a master's degree in clinical psychology from RUC. University in Atlanta, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Central Florida. She has worked in the Human Rights Services since 2004. She previously worked as a victim advocate, with the state's attorney's office in Orlando. And substance abuse counselor at various nonprofits in both Georgia and in Florida. Krista resides in Fayette County with her husband and her daughter. So we are really excited to be here today. Thank you. Can she just take it out and walk with it? Is that your plan? Yeah.
I talk really loud. Do I need the microphone?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Scott. As Paul said, I am a regional prevention coordinator at the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy. We are the Child Advocacy Center for Fulton and DeKalb counties. But since 2005, we have had a prevention department that is statewide. So I am the Region 4 prevention coordinator. So I work in 14 counties down here in, we call it like the South Metro area. So Henry County all the way over to Heard County down to Upton and all those in between. And I have been able to work with lots of people here in this room. I see lots of familiar faces. We do the prevention department. We do tons of different child abuse prevention trainings. So we do trainings on child sexual abuse prevention. We do human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation of children training. The Prevent Child Abuse Source is mandated reporter training. And then what I'm going to talk to you guys about here today, which is our adverse childhood experiences training called Connections Matter. By a show of hands, how many of you guys have ever heard the term ACEs before? Right, so we're about half. All right, so I'm going to just briefly go over some stuff about ACEs and see if we can get. Gotta love technology. Okay, I'll just do that. All right. So I'm going to just briefly go over what the ACEs said. The study that was done back in the mid-1990s, and it was largely ignored by the scientific community for about 10 years. And the study was done by a doctor from the CDC in Atlanta, Dr. Anda, and a doctor out in California, Dr. Coletti, through the Kaiser Permanente. And what Dr. Anda was looking at through the CDC was people's ability to quit smoking and the relationship that that had with childhood trauma that they experienced. Dr. Coletti was interested and ran a very successful weight loss clinic. So he was looking at people's ability in adulthood to lose and maintain weight loss and the impact of childhood trauma on people's ability to do that. So these two doctors came together and developed an ACEs study. And I'm going to show you guys a quick video that really does a great job of summarizing the ACEs study and the findings that were found. This study has been replicated multiple times, and I'm also going to talk to you guys about what we've been doing here in Georgia since 2016 with ACEs.
Childhood is this time of joy and innocence. But for many of us, it's just not true.
When you go up in this type of situation, it's not something to talk about. I mean, I did.
Sharing every thought is an act of chocolate.
Well, I'm at the bottom for now.
There was incredible achievements of vaccines. We average childhood experience is called vaccines from hundreds to million attacker.
Exposure to trauma effects such as developing brain.
Body. What do you have? The skin is attractive. It's full of
If you can make this science into the hands of the general population, they will embed their life. And you feel like they need
Amen.
Amen. Possible. And the biggest attitude is completely disconnected from the managers of the stones. And we should be going after them.
All right, so there were three key findings that came out of that ACEs study. They realized that ACEs are common. They realized that ACEs negatively impact someone's health and well-being across their entire lifespan. And the third key finding was that it can actually change someone's lifespan. So someone who has no ACEs, they have an 80-year life expectancy. Someone who has 6 or more ACEs has a 60-year life expectancy. So a 20-year difference because of those adversities that someone experienced in their childhood. So that first key finding, ACEs are common. So these are the 10 ACE questions that they asked in these initial studies. You can see they broke them down into abuse, neglect, and household stress. They found that 64% of Americans experienced at least one ACE. And as I said, this study has been replicated nationally within states, and all of these statistics stay right around the same numbers. So we see that this is very common, and over half of our population has experienced some type of adversity in their childhood. The other one, this is what it looks like here in Georgia. So Georgia is a little behind the eight ball, but we're trying to catch up as far as ACEs go. So in 2016, we started collecting ACEs data with Georgians, and we are right in line with those national statistics. 3 in 5 Georgians reported experiencing ACEs. Right in line with those national statistics. That next thing was that ACEs can negatively affect someone's health and well-being into their adulthood. So when someone experiences adversity, we see in their adolescence, their teens, where they have those health risk behaviors that then lead to those mental illnesses, that then lead into adulthood, into those poor health outcomes. And the other one that we see is that ACEs can change someone's lifespan. So we see that someone experiences those adverse childhood experiences, that then goes into disruptive brain development, because we know so much development happens during childhood. And when someone is experiencing adversity, that impacts that healthy brain development. That goes into those social, emotional, and cognitive impairments into that child. They get into school, middle school, high school, that's when they start to adopt those risky health behaviors to cope with those stressors. That then leads in adulthood to disease, disability, and social problems, which then leads to that early death, so that difference in life expectancy. So probably something that you're thinking that everyone always thinks is, aren't there more than 10 ACEs that children experience? Yes, there are. In fact, that initial ACE study only encompasses 45% of childhood trauma. So you think about how high those rates are, and it's only encompassing 45%. So where would we be if we had a study that really addressed closer to 100% of that trauma that children go through and experience? So what does this look like with the kids in our high school environment? We're seeing that these children that have higher ACE scores are going to be the kids who fail grades. They're going to be the ones that are scoring lower and struggling on those standardized tests. They have those language difficulties. They're going to be the ones that are more likely to be suspended or expelled in their school, which means you're putting them back into a chaotic environment where they're experiencing that adversity versus keeping them in that structured, safe environment in that school classroom. And they have those poor health outcomes. There's 3 big things that all school systems struggle with kids: attendance, academic problems, and behavioral problems. Children that have no ACEs have about a 12% experiencing those issues in school. Children that have 3 or more ACEs have a 52% of experiencing those issues. So we know that our schools are having to deal with the impact of this adversity that children are experiencing. ACEs are a risk for negative outcomes. Health outcomes are not a guarantee. And we know that we can help buffer and mitigate the adversities that children go through by what we call positive childhood experiences. So there's a lot of research that has come out in the last 5 to 10 years that looks at the positive experiences that children go through and how that can mitigate the negative experiences that children are going through. They started doing resilience surveys with children, and they noticed that children that maybe score high in the ACEs study, but also score high in the resilience survey, they have less of an impact they're less impacted by those ACEs that they experience because they have that resiliency and those positive experiences in their life to buffer and mitigate those negative ones that they're going through. So there's three big key takeaways from the ACEs study. We realize that ACEs are common and they're cumulative. We realize that nearly 1 in 6 adults report experiencing 4 or more ACEs, those 10 questions that are asked. And ACEs were associated with that negative health, behavior, and socioeconomic challenges. So we know and we're seeing that continual impact of the adversity that someone experiences in their childhood well into their adulthood. So we have to change our language when we're talking with children. We have a tendency when a child is acting up or we see a child as being bad, as saying, what is wrong with you? And we need to change that to what has happened to you. Children act up for a reason. There's always reasons behind their behavior. And we have a tendency to blame that child versus asking what has happened to them and getting to that root cause of that behavior. But there's definitely good news. Preventing ACEs can eliminate these chronic conditions, those health risk behaviors, and the negative socioeconomic outcomes that we see with adversity by creating those healthy communities and focusing on that primary prevention. So those positive childhood experiences that help buffer those negative childhood experiences that kids go through, we can see a major difference in this next generation. So that's what the Connections Matter training does. Our Connections Matter training really focuses on what ACEs is and how we can help to buffer and mitigate it by being that caring adult in a child's life. There's 3 main things that we focus on with ACEs. We want to educate on the intersecting topic of what ACEs is, because a lot of people have never heard of ACEs. We want to talk about how trauma and brain development and resilience all have an impact on someone across their lifespan, and how important that brain development and early childhood and the impact that trauma and adversity can have on that. We explore how ACEs adversely affect that brain development and those health outcomes, and we show how caring connections serve as that primary buffer, talking about how we can be those caring adults in a child's life. Research shows they compare children, one child who had multiple caring adults and someone who had no caring adults in their life, and there was a massive statistical difference between those kids. But then they compared that kid who had multiple caring adults in their life to a child that just had one caring adult. It was just one grandmother or one coach that really poured into their life. There was not a huge statistical difference between those 2 children. So what that shows us is kids really just need that one caring adult in their life that can really help mitigate that adversity that they're going through. And anybody can be that one caring adult in a child's life. So Connections Matter ultimately strives to promote the building of a more resilient, compassionate, and trauma-informed community. And when we do that, we're allowing children and individuals to succeed. One of the programs that we promote, and this is already being done thanks to Judge P here in Truth County, is Handle with Care. This is where local law enforcement partner with the school system, and if a child is involved with law enforcement in any way, a Handle with Care notice goes to the school, so the school knows that if that kid acts up that day or puts their head down, they just experienced something with law enforcement. No details of what it was were given to the school. There's no HIPAA violated. It's just a heads up. They're not going to single that child out, but it's just a heads up that over the weekend, this child was involved with law enforcement, with their family. They were involved in a car wreck. They were involved with their home, their domestic dispute, whatever it is. And it just gives the school system a heads up. And the school systems that have implemented this before COVID found it very helpful during COVID, because they were still getting these referrals and they were able to pass them on to the teachers. And when they had those Zoom classes, those teachers kind of knew to kind of check in with that student, pay more attention to the surroundings while that child was on Zoom. So it's been really helpful for them. Again, this is something that Truth County is already doing and has a great foundation with it. We have a parent version of Connections Matter. We made this more focused on parenting, and it's called Becoming a More Resilient Parent. So the Connections Matter training is more for professionals that are working with kids. Wanted to develop a training specific to parents. So this one's called Becoming a More Resilient Parent, where we address a lot of issues of parenting and the impact that adversity can have and how parents can help build resilience in themselves and in their children. We also have a second, a 2.0 Connections Matter called a CAT, Becoming More Trauma-Informed. We just finished the pilot phase of this one. This is going to be for organizations that have gone through Connections Matter who want to become more trauma-informed. So we use SAMHSA's 6 guiding principles for organizations becoming more trauma-informed and go through those with the organization so they can start to implement those actions to really be able to call themselves a trauma-informed organization. So the 3 main things that we address in Connections Matter is brains, relationships, and communities, and how all 3 of those things are interconnected. These are all of our contributors, and we also do ones monthly virtually through the Georgia Center. We have one on August 27th that is virtual via Zoom. So this is my contact information if anyone is interested in going through the Connections Matter training, or if you're interested in our human trafficking training or a mandated reporter training, any of those other trainings that we offer, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can get those scheduled or let you know when we have a virtual one coming up. So I was going to leave time for questions. So if anybody has any questions, I talk really fast, even though I'm trying to stop, and I was really scared I was going to go over. So I was like,
What about the adult child that have tobacco addictions? Is there a third way you could address the child or work with that child to help overcome some of those?
what do you mean by an adult child? Like someone in college? Yeah. So like an adult. There's 2 very different groups because your brain is not fully developed until around the age of 25. So your brain still has a lot of, but if you're past 25, we go through in the Connections Matter training talking about the brain plasticity and how you can repair those pieces of the brain that might have been damaged in the adversity that you experienced, how there is that malleability of our brain even well into adulthood, no matter what. So we go through that type of stuff in the Connections Matter. And anyone can heal and overcome the adversity they face, even if it didn't have those parent notes. Anybody else have any other questions?
Both of my daughters are teach and my wife recently retired from central office. One of my daughters has some kind of specialty where she works with something. So I guess I'll put this in the form of a question. Is it valid to assume that these percentage of students with ACEs also have a negative impact on the students without ACEs? Because I see from experience, it impacts the way the class is conducted, especially with a lot of regulations that require students to be kept in the class, to try to prevent suspension and fail, and a lot of other regulations. Keep them in the class, it impacts the way a teacher can teach. Therefore, it's got an impact on the students who don't follow. Is there a study on that?
I'm not sure if there is a specific study on that, and I don't work in the classrooms. I know that is always an ongoing challenge for the teachers. And again, that's where stuff like Handle with Care really does come into, like, very helpful for them because they have that heads up. They, it might not be something they single the child out. Maybe they just pull them aside before they go out to recess and just check in on them. Because sometimes that's all that kid needs. I understand what you're saying. I don't know the research that's out there, the impact specifically of this child has this ACE4 and they're disruptive to the kids that don't have that. I think that would go with any behavioral education issues that kids have if needs.
Back to Bill's question about an adult child. Wouldn't an adult child of alcoholism, say, adult child of child abuse, sexual abuse, wouldn't they be able to seek help through the support groups for alcoholism, like Al-Anon, et cetera? So that you would, because as we know, we may say we don't want to be like our parents, and we're not going to do the way our parents do, but the first thing we do is what our parents did. And so I think that it's valuable, especially valuable, and we're fortunate to have those kinds of services that they had for them at that time, and a lot of those children, of course, be able to have Alateen and Alatot, and the support is there for the adult children.
Yes, and we talk about in the Connection Matter training, the two-generation approach or the two-gen approach. So we really talk about how when you are addressing the needs of children, you also need to be addressing the needs of the family. Because we know this type of stuff is generational. And so throwing a bunch of resources to a child is a Band-Aid on a broken leg. Because they're going home to a still chaotic environment. And parents want to be good parents, but they don't know how they're going to pay the light bill or their rent, or they lost their job, or they can't get to work. They're not, it's not the entire BP. They're not going to be looking at, their child's social, emotional well-being when they're trying to keep a roof over their head. And so the types of organizations and places that work with children really encourage that two-generation approach, address the needs of both the child, but also the family, so that it's that whole approach. In that the parents are getting a care, because they experience adversity, and now their children are experiencing, you've got to try to stop that cycle.
You mentioned that children have higher degrees of resiliency to the bounce back. Is there some way to cultivate this?
Yeah, we go through that in the Connections Matter training. Children, as much as we like to say that children are resilient, resiliency is a skill that is developed. It's a muscle that we have to practice with. Children are not born resilient. And so it's one of those things that we go through in the Connections Matter training. We go through the relationships part. How do we cultivate and build resiliency for children? So that's something that we address.
Is this program available to the schools, the DOT schools, like down on Fort Moore, around Warren Robins?
Yes, we've done trainings and we've done trainings in the school systems. And some school systems have adopted this where they train the counselors and social workers to be trainers. Upstate County, Pike County, a couple other counties have trainers in-house, and they train the new hires as they come on. So it's really just about getting the school systems on board. We trained 125 people from Atlanta Public Schools to be trainers, and they went in and trained the entire Atlanta Public Schools. So it's really an individual county basis. The schools coming and saying, yes, we're going to make the time for the training during our pre-planning or post-planning or the new hire orientation and get all of our staff.
With all due respect, I was not reading Tim.
The 10 pieces, I can go back to them.
Yeah, I can read them out to you and I'll go back to them. All right, so we break them down into 3 categories. So you have abuse, and in the abuse category is physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Then we have those household categories, which is going to be substance abuse, incarceration, parent separation or divorce, mental illness, and then we also have neglect. And what we do when we ask those questions is this is just a yes or no. So they're not asking them how often did you experience this, what ages did you experience this. These surveys are just simply asking before the age of 18, did you experience this in your home? So with someone incarcerated, if you're having an illness, they have substance use problem, did you experience emotional, physical, or sexual abuse? Did you experience emotional neglect or physical neglect? So they ask those and it's a yes or no. And we go through this in more detail and go through an ACEs tree and talk about what's not included, the impacts that has. And one thing that we have added, we do this survey here in Georgia every 2 years. So the data that we show you guys is from 2016, 2018, 2020. We skipped 2022 because of funding. We just collected data back in 2023. One thing that we added to the data that we collected for Georgia in 2023 was asking about positive childhood experiences. So we included that in the survey to start seeing the difference that there is there. Those kids that are experiencing adversity, how many positive childhood experiences. So of course the data takes forever to get all of that out. Hoping we'll have that data soon to be able to show what that shows here in Georgia. But we work those into it because we don't know how important that is. I think talking about the school system and things like that, but just sitting here listening, I look forward to going through it. I thought maybe I could do that talk last, but I saw you. Yeah. But I can see this as an advantage for any occupation or any of us in here that work in a management role, that work with employees. I mean, if we just go to that Connection Matters training and then our employees start having concerns or different work habits at work, it might be a way to open up a conversation, checking your HR first, but I mean, it might be a way to have a conversation just in the back of your mind, like, what's happened to you in your childhood that's getting triggered here in your
Yes.
place of work now?
Yeah, because you see people with higher cases and children working and they have 14 more mental health days, illnesses and issues than someone who has no experience. So this impacts the substantial.
Obviously, law enforcement went through this program. I mean, I know they get so much training already, but just knowing the brain side of why this is happening, that's a great asset for our community.
Would the loss of a parent not be considered?
We go over all the ones that are included in the connection matter training. So there's 10 questions that the survey asks. That's only 45% of child. So we talk about what are the other ones that are not included. It would be way too long of a survey. You know that you hang up on those people when they call you at 6 p.m. And we're like, there's 100 questions we would like to ask you. 10 just tends to be easier to get through. So these were the 10 that Dr. Eva and Dr. Pillay initially started with. We talk about, and we go through a tree of different adversities that children experience. You have the historical adversities, you have the community adversities, and we talk about all that information. That is definitely an adversity that a child experiences. It's just not always put together.
Talking about adult kids, is there a certain age that it's most important to catch that kid? If they don't have positive reinforcement, to add that to their
Entire childhood.
well, I get that, but I mean, is it middle school, is it elementary school? I mean,
It's school age, definitely, and definitely, like, I mean, when you hear, I have people that come up to me and say, I was a 10 out of 10 on that. And my middle school baseball coach, or basketball, or city leader, really, for the person, it depends on the adversity that they're experiencing, when they're experiencing it, like, when is the biggest need for that child. But that child having at least one parent throughout their childhood is huge for them. And we know it's hard to catch the 0 to 5 because the majority of the time the children are just at home. Their primary caregivers are kind of their only sense of support. We can see that there's more outlets for other people to be that person for that child once they're sleeping, just because they're in activities in their house. So, I mean, if you want to think about it that way, school age is a one thing.
Does it show whether, you said, uncaring adult, does it need to be? Just as long as there's one.
If we said if there's one person that is, yeah, I mean, that might change for a child. So, they might have a soccer coach in elementary school, and then it becomes someone different when they're in middle. So it's just that one parent adult that they can go to. It doesn't have to be that same person the entire time.
What, you may have touched on this. When does childhood end first?
So the survey asks 18 and under. But when we talk about brain development, our brain is not fully developed until around the age of 25. So as far as childhood and for the survey for ages, we're talking about 18. When we talk about brain development, we're talking more mid.
I read at Berger Weatherspoon in the first grade, and Miss Clark, the students love positivity, everything else. She is that transformative person for every single person in the class. Are there any studies that measure the impact of a caring teacher?
Yes, we have examples of that in the connection matter. Sounds like you guys need to go through the training. The training is 4 hours. Yes, the training is 4 hours. We do it in person or virtual. It's approved for CEUs for law enforcement, for right from the start, and for counselors, LMFT, LCSW. The cost is $350 for 35 people and $500 for 50 people. Or if I do it just per person, it's like $15, $20, depending on how many people. Yeah. So like an organization wants to do it. And yes, the Georgia Center, we're constantly offering virtually, and then we're also doing, we always do a prevention palooza in April for child abuse, but we are also doing a Prevent-tober Fest in October. So we're gonna offer all the trainings that we offer, we're gonna offer, over a 2-week period in October, and all those are virtual on all the state. Yeah, so, but we have a virtual Connections Matter training, 8:30 to 12:30, August 27th, and then I'll be doing that. And if you're interested in that, I can get you that information.
I'm heard you mentioned bullying. Is that all?
That's another one we go through, when we're going over like the ACEs, 3 of the stuff that's not included in them. I feel like I'm doing like a part of the training. So what are some of the things that aren't included? And you guys have answered the big ones. But we go through that, and we go through those other branches of diversity. Yeah.
I feel like there's lots of training and connections do matter. So maybe we've got our memorial that could make some things happen for us to do the training, and we could, send out those things as well. I think all in honor of your speaking today, we'll be making a donation to Polio Plus, which is, Rotary Commission to eradicate polio. Thank you again. Just a couple of announcements. Again, next week we'll have a Rotary board. That'll be at 1 o'clock. Our program next week will be John Lanier with the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. On the 28th, we'll have Brigadier General Pete Jones with the National Infantry thing. There'll be great programs to come. And then September 4th, Maddie Cook with Camp Southern Ground will be here. So, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for listening today.
Well,